welcome to Gab and Jim, episode 246.
All right, and what are we discussing today?
Okay, so we're happy to be back with you, and this is a topic that over the years has kind of bubbled to the surface, but it's basic recording studio setup for the D.I.Y. rockstar.
Right.
So we've owned a studio since 1980, 5 for you, 6 together.
Right, yeah. Well,
So for decades.
Yes.
And these are about the 5 questions that we would have you to think about when you're getting ready to decide what your basic setup is going to be.
Yeah, and go ahead with your first question, but I'm going to kind of add an addendum to that question.
I love it.
Okay,
so any creator, one of the 5 things you should think about before you choose equipment is to think about the style of music that you're recording first.
Yeah.
So there are likely to be varying needs depending on the genre. So for instance, if you're rapping, you may be able to use your iPhone.
Right.
If you're making beats, but if you're doing something that's a little bit more involved, you might want to consider other equipment.
So first and foremost, I think you have to just consider your budget. What is your budget? What do you have to work with? So meaning that if you're saying, hey, I don't have anything to work with, all I want to do is just use the resources in which I have, then you're at that point where you have to start saying, okay, can I use my phone? And so, there are a number of free DAWs, digital audio workstations, that you can get for your mobile phones or whatever.
I like that.
So, like, I think, like, with Apple, I think GarageBand comes with like your Apple phone. There are things like BandLab that you can get, I think, like for Android devices and things like that. That is free.
Okay.
So, and then when you start thinking in terms of that, you got to start thinking, okay, how am I going to get, like, if you need to get audio into the phone? So, you have a microphone on the phone. So a lot of those will allow you to use your microphone. Now, that microphone could be used to record you singing. It could be used to record, an amplified, like I just did here. We just use the amplifier from the bass or whatever else, and you can bring that into your DAW, use it, blah, blah, blah. If that's all that you have to use is your phone.
Okay.
So I think that kind of going along with the style of music that you want to make is also, what is my budget?
Okay. So maybe start with that, and then what type of music?
Yes.
Okay, so 1 and 2. Okay, I love it. All right, so the next thing to consider, the general guideline when it comes to setting up your basic studio is what kinds of instruments and vocals are you planning? So you had mentioned when we were talking earlier about virtual instruments or standalone keyboards versus drums versus mic feeds versus a piano player versus weighted keys versus full-size keyboard. What are the types of things that you plan to record with?
Exactly. So kind of, again, depending on how you're going to, what style of music that you're doing.
Right.
So like if you are maybe a hip hop artist or maybe you're an EDM artist or something like that, you may be able to get by with, like I was saying before, your phone, where you could get in certain virtual instruments where you could actually use a little keyboard that's on your phone, and then you can also use like little drum kits that's on your phone and things like that, and you may be able to manipulate that in such a way where, hey, that works for you.
Right.
If you're a singer-songwriter, if you're a band, if you're something like that, that might not quite get it.
Yeah.
Then even what you would need to kind of capture your band, to get your band into a phone, that might not quite get it, right? But the good thing is that at one time when we were coming up, you had tape. So their Tascam made these 4-track tape machines, which unbelievоunbelievably, people are buying these things for way too much money.
Right.
I mean,
way
the nostalgia as far as what
80s.
they think these things are, they sound horrible. I'm sorry. They sound awful. They're awful sounding. Cassette was like the worst thing you can record on.
Because it's so thin.
Right, so thin, and you're putting 4 tracks on. It was awful.
Yeah.
But anyway, now what they do have is that Tascam, Zoom have these digital multi-track recorders that you can get. I think Korg's got one too that's like 32 tracks or something like that you can buy these things. And the good thing about that is that these things can kind of move up with you. So like Zoom's got a few of them. Like Zoom's got one that's probably about $500 that not only allows you to record like 16 tracks or so, but it has like a drum machine that's built into it.
Okay.
And then it also could work as an audio interface for a computer.
Okay.
So that's going to a whole different level, but
Right.
just saying that you got this device that can grow with you.
Yeah, that's
So
nice.
so
Yeah.
that's the
Yeah.
other aspect of it, is that you could be making an investment into something that not only does it serve well for you and if you got a band, but when you go out live, you can capture this stuff.
Oh, yeah, that's good.
But, you know, it also is something that can grow with an expanding studio setup.
Okay, yeah, I like that. And don't forget, we're not sponsored by anybody, but
No.
we will put some of the things that Bruce just mentioned in the blog post that accompanies, just for some ideas, some starting places for you guys to look.
Right.
Okay, so the next thing to consider when setting up your basic studio for the DIY Rockstar is, are you recording live?
Yeah.
So you mentioned possibly even taking playing out live and recording tracks, or recording live in the studio, straight into your DAW or tape machine or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So that would be a completely different consideration, because you're going to need mic feeds for each of the instruments and all that other, and the background vocals. Everybody's going to need their own input for
Right.
if
you're going to do it all
live
at the same time, right? You know,
right.
or you might have to, you know, judiciously figure out, well, what kind of things can we sacrifice and group together?
Yes.
You know, exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
So, I mean, because a long time ago, remember, you know, the bulk of like the Beatles records were recorded on 4 tracks. You know, so I mean, when you're thinking about them using a 4-track machine and some of the complexities that they got, you know, you can do a lot kind of grouping similar things together that might be EQ'd together and stuff like that, and strategically using your mics and things like that, right? So again, the technology that we had today dwarfs technology that they had 40 or 50 years ago.
Yeah, for
but
sure.
you can listen to those records and still enjoy them. And so the fact that they were able to make good records then kind of puts you in that situation where you can say, I should be able to get a decent recording now with the technology that we have. You just kind of have to be strategic. And again, you think about your budget. You know, because depending on your budget, mic inputs cost a lot, and they cost a lot because of 2 things. You know, you get more of that, you know, just more inputs.
More
normally
sound.
Costs more.
Oh, more inputs, period. Right.
But usually what you have, too, is you have these analog to digital converters that you have. And so depending on how good the device is that's made, you know, like United Audio, they make some of the best ones out there. You know, Apogee and some of these other companies made some of the best ones. So you're going to pay a lot of money for like the digital input devices that they have. It's those converters that you're also paying for. So that is what takes that analog signal that, you know, you take from your guitar, and then it converts that to a digital signal so that it can be recorded to, you know, that standalone system or to your phone or whatever. That's what's happening even with your voice on your phone. Same thing is happening. You're having that analog to digital conversion that's taking place. And so the better those converters are, the better the sound quality you're going to have, but also the more expensive the gear.
So a lot of considerations go into what you end up choosing, but it just gives you a lot to think about as you are putting together your pieces. All right, and then the next general guideline for setting up your basic recording studio for the DIY Rockstar is consider your individual, specific, idiosyncratic needs. So what I mean by that is what works for you. So we were talking about using your phone. Some people use their phones to record the music, to edit the music, and to make the video and everything.
They can do all that.
But for me, I prefer a laptop. I've tried using the phone for video making, and I'm even trying to do more with Canva on the phone, because I know you can. But it is just such a different experience. I need the bigger screen. But that's just me.
Right.
So a basic setup for me would absolutely include a laptop first.
Right.
But that may not be. There are so many people. I was watching somebody on one of the planes coming back from when we were coming back from France, and she was editing all her video on her phone. So the trip that we were spending all those hours trapped on the plane, she was actually being productive.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my God, like that. That wouldn't be me. But so again, you need to consider what works for you.
Right, and then that's the other part is that, or it could be like an iPad or something like that.
Yeah.
But the thing you have to remember is, to the extent that you're going to bring in anything externally, that's when you have to have some means to bring that in. So meaning that if you're going to bring MIDI, from an external device into your computer or into something else, then you got to have some type of MIDI input in order to get there.
Right.
And so computers don't normally come with them.
Right.
Used to with the Atari ST. Actually had a MIDI input device a long time ago.
Yeah.
But they normally don't.
Yeah.
So kind of going to another thing, it's kind of like, as we were talking about like Zoom and some of these others that give you these digital multi-track recorders, but there's also another realm in, especially if you're doing hip hop, if you're doing EDM, and then even if you're a singer-songwriter, is like the MPC. So like the MPC Live, the MPC One. I think the MPC One is the cheapest MPC that's out there. That's standalone.
Right.
But that gives you 8 tracks of audio. You get tons of MIDI. You have drum machine, but then it allows you a way to bring in audio in, so you can bring in guitars. You can play a guitar, make a guitar track, bring in microphones. But you can also bring in external MIDI devices. So if you do have an external MIDI keyboard or something like that, you can use that. But it's also got its own sounds on board.
Yeah.
So just based what comes out of the box, you're in a situation with that box alone, you can make everything you need to make, and it comes with Wi-Fi. So you can upload, you can do a mix on it, and you can upload it to like SoundCloud or some other, or you could transfer it to a computer.
Yeah.
You can do that.
Yeah.
Or, you can transfer it to your phone or something like that. You have that ability within that. So, I mean, that's the other thing that you have is that, without even touching a computer, you can get into something like an MPC One, and I think it's somewhere in the neighborhood of $700, $800 or something like that. But it kind of gives you a whole studio. Right there. And without even hooking up to a computer. And it's got software and stuff like that you can use a computer with it that works both for Windows and Mac.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead.
Oh yeah. Okay, so the final thing to consider, which is kind of what you started with at the beginning, but just adding on to that, the next thing to consider is start with what's free or what's provided first.
Yeah.
Before you go out and buy, because we have been finding, I know for me, I've been finding I was a junkie for filters and all kinds of stuff for video making, and then I realized I don't even know half the stuff that I've purchased already.
Yeah.
So before you go down the rabbit hole and spend a bunch of money, figure out some of the stuff that it came with your equipment. Try it out first.
Yeah.
And then see if maybe the limitations are too much for you.
Yeah.
Like for me, you use Logic. Yeah. But for me, that was like too big, to handle, whereas GarageBand is limited, but that's the limitation I need.
Right. And that's the thing. The beauty, too, is that as far as for Apple users, is that a GarageBand comes with it. Yeah. GarageBand is basically a scaled down version of Logic. Right. And the great thing is that anything that you do in GarageBand, you can transfer it to Logic. So if you want to go to Logic, you can do that. And the cool thing about Logic versus other DAWs that's out there is that you pay that one, $200.
Oh my goodness.
And then after that, they keep upgrading, they keep adding stuff to it. Like now all of a sudden, it's got a way where you could launch clips. So Logic now has a kind of a functionality that's akin to Ableton Live, but you didn't have to pay for that upgrade.
Yeah.
So like I bought it once and I have not, and I bought Logic back in 2013. Have not paid for anything else.
Yeah, and
that has been thrown in with
That
Logic.
is super important because I switched, video making. I know it's a slightly different lane, but it still pertains to DIY Rockstar. Video making, originally I started with Adobe Premiere, and then that requires a monthly fee now if you were to get into it now.
Yeah.
Whereas Final Cut Pro, it was like $350, whatever it was.
Right.
But it was, once I bought it, I got it, I'm done.
Yeah.
And I don't have to worry about from year to year now, or because I think with Adobe it's like $20 a month or something.
Yeah.
That seems innocuous. That seems very, that's not much. I can afford that. When you think year after year after year of $20 per month, you're paying an astronomical rate for that product.
It's nice to be in a situation where, there could be significant overhauls. Like, I had Studio One. So I have Studio One. And they did a significant upgrade, I think to Studio One 5 or something like that. And I think it was going to cost me like $200-some, or it was some ridiculous amount to upgrade. And it was like, no, I got Logic, and Logic has added, all tons of virtual instruments. They've just overhauled like plugins for Logic. I mean, these are things that will cost you hundreds of dollars that you just got thrown in there.
Yeah.
These extensive overhauls and improvements that they've made, you've just been able to get it without having to pay extra for it.
Yeah.
So just based on that alone, that was enough to kind of get me into Logic. Yeah. But again, there are tons of other, DAWs
We're not
that are out
for
there.
anything in particular. Right. It's just you need to figure out what works for you.
What works for you. Yeah. I mean, there's tons of them like that. And again, there are the free ones. BandLab, which was Cakewalk. I used to use Sonar, before I switched from the PC to the Mac. I used to use Sonar, was made by Cakewalk. With BandLab, that's free now. And that is great software. I mean, I loved it. So if you have a PC, that's great to use as far as that goes. And then, still today, Pro Tools is the industry standard.
Yeah.
So, you have to consider that. But just think about this when you're thinking about your computer setup, is that, your audio interface is going to make a difference.
Yes.
And you can get some cheap ones that are good. I mean, UAD, Universal Audio, they have some really cheap ones now that goes through a USB-C port. Okay. That's, I think, under $200 that you can get.
Okay.
Focusrite, PreSonus have the same thing. Usually, like with PreSonus, they're going to give you a version of Studio One to start off with. Okay. It's going to be a bare bones version.
Limited. Okay.
But if you find that works for you, it's a good entry port for that. So, and a lot of these DAWs, whether it's Ableton, whatever it might be, and even the smaller version, the LE version, limited edition version, usually they come with virtual instruments, they come with plugins, they come with all the things you need to do to get started.
Yeah. Because again, if you just setting up your recording studio, which is great because it's a great place to, write songs, experiment, not have to pay hourly rate and all that good stuff. You want to take your time to figure out what is going to work for you, but you want entry point. You don't want something where it's, hey, I need $10,000 to get started. You want to start, well, hey, even if you have money, a good $200 maybe gets your foot wet.
Yeah.
Before you move on to start buying the big stuff. So to make it more accessible for you and just more doable.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's true.
All right. What do you guys think? What consideration did we leave out that you might want to think about when setting up your basic recording studio for DIY Rockstar? And what else?
As usual, feel free, go out there, stream Sugarfit. It is on Apple Music. It is on Spotify.
It is on Deezer. It is on Tidal. It is on
you want to
your favorite
music, just go and stream it.
Yeah. All right. And if you dig the vibe and you want to be a part of the tribe, be sure to
subscribe.
We're wishing you love, peace, and
chicken grease.